How's it going, guys? And welcome to your Money in the Bank review. So I watched this show with my good friend J-Man Riot. Go subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. I've mentioned him here before. So we watched this show, and this was a pretty good pay-per-view. I was about to say decent, but it was good. It really was, and I think this was a really good reintroduction to WWE pay-per-view to a live audience. Now, for the home viewing audience, it didn't glitch out through the whole show, but for the Money in the Bank men's match during the entrances, there was glitching out the ass, and it was really pathetic because I've already done an overview. I've already done a review of the WWE Network on Peacock. And that right there is a great example of why this is not very surprising. Whatever the case may be, it was glitching out. I don't know if this was just the WWE portion. It was a live stream, so I guess so. We're not really getting a lot of answers. They did fix it later on, but this is kind of inexcusable. This is something that happened in the very beginning of the WWE Network because, they were getting their bearings. I remember it happened during WrestleMania 30. I think they had a few hiccups here and there, and it happened a few months after because, it's a new format. It's a new platform. WWE wasn't used to doing these live streaming sorts of things. So I think they would do it on WWE.com, but I don't know how many people used to watch the pay-per-views on there. But regardless of the point, it shows with the formatting of the network, and if you want to find something on there, how it's so much of a struggle. You do a search, and sometimes it won't come up unless you put the exact thing that you're looking for. And you can search by superstar. You can't do a lot of things on there. And the fact that, that they broke it up as season instead of year just kind of shows that they're totally clueless about this. Like, you have people formatting this thing that are kind of just treating it like it's a regular show when they don't realize they have years and years of content and time is ticking down. They have a month to meet that deadline, that promise that they made. They're going to have everything that was on the network when it was under WWE's control on Peacock come SummerSlam. So that remains to be seen. They'll probably get it done. They'll probably crunch it, but them having these little technical issues, it kind of shows that they don't really know what they're dealing with. And it was pissing a lot of people off. It definitely wasn't a good thing that everyone got on Twitter and they were just slamming Peacock as a bunch of incompetence. And that's the thing, because the network, when it was under WWE's control, and it still is in the UK, it was a pretty good product for the most part. People used to always bash it and everything, and you could say about it devaluing the product, it only being a $10 product and all that. But regardless, it was something for someone like me that spends quite a bit of time watching the archived content, such as the old Raws and SmackDowns. It was a good product. There was nothing really to complain about. Also, they didn't censor anything out, not majorly anyway. You didn't have the Nation parody being edited out for controversial reasons. So you don't know what you got until it's gone. And now it's not gone completely. It's been given away, and now we've taken a step down here, and we see that they don't really understand the technology of live streaming an event on there. And I don't get it. This didn't happen on the last pay-per-view, whatever it was. I've already forgotten what the last pay-per-view was, but it didn't happen last time, and there's no excuse for it happening right now anyway. So anyway, let's get into the event. Let's get into Money in the Bank. So we started off with the pre-show, and what do we have here? We've got Rey Mysterio and Dominic and the Usos come out on top with another tag title reign. I didn't watch this, but now having them all as champions in the bloodline, it kind of makes sense. You want to have all the gold there. I don't think we really got a lot out of this Dominic Rey Mysterio run with the tag titles, the father and son thing. You would have expected something. Was it just me? I really doubt it was just me, but didn't this just feel empty? We always wanted to have the father and son tag team. We never got to see this, really, in WWE. When did we ever see this? Did we ever see Rocky Johnson teaming up with Rocky Maivia in a tag match? No, we never got to see that. The only time I remember is when they had Ivan and Scott Putski in a tag match, if anyone remembers that, from late 1997 on Raw. But you didn't see this, the D.H. Smith, Davey Boy Smith, the David Hart Smith, British Bulldog tag team that was supposed to, actually make it to the main roster. Never happened. Davey Boy Smith unfortunately passed away in 2002, so that never came to fruition. But no, we have Rey Mysterio and Dominic father-son tag team. Dominic with his lineage in the WWE, being involved in a major storyline with Eddie Guerrero. There was history there that we could build off of, and this was, I said that this was actually good to see a father-son tag team, but regardless of that point, they really butchered this. It didn't feel like a father-son. It didn't feel like even when they won the titles, it didn't feel like a feel-good story. It didn't feel like a feel-good moment. It just felt like something that happened. It felt like just a transitional tag title match. And we pretty much got more excitement seeing Rey Mysterio than go into a Hell in the Cell match against Roman Reigns. And we quickly forgot that Rey was even a tag champ. But that's becoming more and more prevalent on this show. I forgot how many times that Bobby Roode and Dolph Ziggler were the tag champs. I had to stop and think, well, who were the tag champs on SmackDown? And, we got the title switch. And that's all I could say, really. It keeps the title, keeps those titles in the camp of the bloodline. And it doesn't really do much else. Because, at this point, I've said in the past, and I'm going to say it again when we talk about Charlotte, when you've won this many titles in such a short frame of time, when Ric Flair won his 16 world titles, we were talking about something over a 25, 30-year period. It was like a long stretch of time, more like 20 years, really, now that I kind of think about it. But, you would say, okay, someone could win that amount of titles, but you kind of think of how many times they lost that title, and now they're winning it again. But anyway, can't really talk about the match. Didn't watch it. Wasn't really that interested in seeing it. So, because we've already seen this match 3 times already, and 2 times it already happened on the same episode of SmackDown, so I'm not going to watch it again. So we have the first match here, and we've got Nikki ASH winning the Money in the Bank. And, thing is, it's not like I dislike Nikki Cross, people talking about Nikki Cross and everything, and I'm saying, is she an attractive girl? Yeah, she's got the girl next door gimmick going on. I think we had that a little bit more with some other wrestlers in the past, other female stars in the past, but not that I dislike her. It's just this inability to figure out what to do with her. And it's nice that they allowed her to pick her own gimmick, kind of giving her the Bray Wyatt treatment, let her choose her own story. And I'm not opposed to doing a superhero gimmick because, Gregory Helms is, I won't say one of my favorites, but definitely a wrestler that I really liked and always enjoyed a lot of different parts of his career. And the Hurricane was definitely one of those bright points. That was a character that he created, that he took into his own, and he made it successful. So much so that they decided to actually give him a victory over The Rock on an episode of Raw, and it was pretty over. So with that being said, why can't it work for Nikki Cross? Well, of course, she's not Gregory Helms, But you could say, like, okay, this could be a cute gimmick. The kids could get behind it, and even the adults could at least say it's funny. But, there's nothing really funny about it. The costume is atrocious. Like, if you're going to have her have a costume here, I don't know if she made this costume or what it is, because sometimes they have people that work on this, like, for example, they have makeup artists, and, I don't know, but I've said this in the past. First of all, like, I don't know who's doing their makeup now, because you got Liv Morgan out there, and people have even said this about Liv Morgan. The fact that she has these, like, teardrop things, it greatly detracts from her looks. Like, it looks really weird and bizarre, especially when they do a close-up on her face. So with that same concept, why are we giving Nikki ASH? First of all, it's almost a superhero, so they're kind of doing the Rosie Hurricane thing, that's the point that I wanted to get to here. And it's not funny as the same way as it was it was SHIT. Remember, it was supposed to be like shit, but superhero in training. And that was funny. And, that was like a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek there. Here, like ASH, there's nothing to it. It's not funny. And no one is training her. That's the thing. So she's almost a superhero. So in her own mind, she feels that she's not ready yet to be a superhero. When it was Rosie and Hurricane was designed because he was the original superhero that Rosie wasn't yet ready. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense from a storyline standpoint that she would not consider herself to be ready. I did like the finish to this match. I like how she kind of snuck in, and took it while everyone... It kind of... I see what they're going for here. She's supposed to be goofy, a little bit of a feel-good character, an underdog. But the other stuff going on in this match, there was some good stuff. I like Nikki Cross jumping off the top of the ladder. That had a bit of a comedic touch to it. And there were some good points to it, but for the most part, the Alexa Bliss stuff, Zelina Vega screaming, getting hypnotized, and all this stuff. You have Liv Morgan also. Well, Liv Morgan was the one who was screaming. Zelina Vega's like a deer caught in the headlights. This was very reminiscent. I remember when, speaking of Finn Balor on our SmackDown review, remember that time when Bray Wyatt, he did the thing, that he does like the spider upside down mannerism. Remember Finn Balor on the top rope, like a deer caught in the headlights? He did this really comedic, stupid looking, shocked look. And that's kind of what we got here, like repeated like 2 or 3 times over. And the Natalya Liv Morgan tug of war was probably the lamest spot I've seen. Like, I'm really supposed to believe that Natalya, who's jacked, can go toe to toe with Liv Morgan here and be struggling against her. And they're struggling with the ladder for like 3 minutes, and they're holding the ladder as people are doing moves off of it. This kind of reminded me of, and I still remember it pretty well in my mind, of Money in the Bank 2013, when you had Cesaro and a few other wrestlers holding a ladder as other wrestlers did moves off top of it. I get that we want to do cool moves and it's suspension of disbelief, but after a while it just gets to be fucking outrageous, and you just have people doing goofballish stuff left and right. And it's like, okay, after a while you would just kind of, wouldn't you just drop the ladder so the person would just fall? And then we saw another really retarded looking spot where Asuka is not even halfway up the ladder and Tamina is like slowly tipping it, and Asuka's like, no. And I'm like, you could just simply drop down off the ladder or climb down really quickly and you'd be off of it in like 3 seconds. So there was a lot of goofballish stuff. And we're going to talk about how we didn't have that goofballish stuff over on the men's side of things. So, there were some good things here and there, and I won't go out of my way and say this was an awful, terrible match. I respect the Off the Rope show. And, he's saying basically on there, Jeff, that this is, a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad match. I won't go that far because there were parts that captured my interest, but for the most part, it wasn't that great. Just every other match on this show was better. That's what I'm saying. This is a Money in the Bank. Thankfully, it wasn't that long. It was like 15 minutes, so they got in and they got out, and I'm fine with that. But yeah, the stuff with Alexa Bliss, she was fine the way she was. I know she didn't really have a, gimmick per se, but the powers of, reaching up and having people believe that she's going to really pull down the Money in the Bank briefcase and hypnotizing Zelina Vega. We've kind of reached this point where this just kind of looks ridiculous, and now we're past the Thunderdome era, and I think we can we put to rest the ridiculousness already? I mean, because we've had enough of it, and it just looks really stupid and far-fetched at this point. And I know a lot of people are going to get into oh, but what about The Undertaker and all that, and we could just debate this left and right all day long, but certain things work and certain things don't. And this, to me, is not working. It just looks kind of silly, stupid, and cartoonish. I think most people, if given a chance, would say they'd rather not have the cartoonish stuff on the show. Then we have Roman Reigns backstage with the Usos. They do another little kind of tongue-in-cheek where they're almost talking about the Jimmy Uso situation, but not quite. So, they're all together, and you have Jimmy Uso and Jay kind of trying to suck up to Roman. And I thought Jimmy was pretty comical here. But once again, we're kind of what are they getting at here, really? And they don't want to say it. But it could also be taken as a double meaning, that he has to prove himself because he just came back into the fold. But is he talking about the DUI? Would it really be that bad if they talked about the DUI? The DUI, would it really just turn everybody off? And I mean, come on, just say it once and then get out. If that's what you're worried about, I mean. Just by saying the words DUI, will it really spark that much controversy when basically everyone knows about it? It's in the news, so why would you not take this as an opportunity, especially when you have to have Jimmy Uso proving himself? It would play perfectly into that, but, it's always got to be tongue-in-cheek. We always have to, dance around it, and not quite say what it is. And it doesn't really make sense to me because I've said this in the past. You've had Cena talk about it. You've had the New Day talk about it. So why are we not touching on it here? In the most pivotal part where, those other things are frivolous. Here it really matters because it fits into the storyline perfectly. And we can kind of get away from doing the same thing all the time with them. But, I'm sure we'll get more into that when we review SmackDown later this week. AJ Styles and Omos retain against the Viking Raiders. Did anybody really think that the Vikings were going to win it here? I don't know what it is with this team, but, they're bigger guys and everything. And, they have a tough style. They're roughnecks, and I would think that I would like a team like this, but it's just the presentation and everything. Just the whole Viking gimmick and just it's very mid-90s WWE of just doing goofballish characters, cartoonish characters. Especially when we also have a main eventer in Drew McIntyre doing this crap where he's dressing up, as, not a Viking per se, but dressing up as Braveheart, doing the same type of stupid stuff of, playing Halloween every night. I'm really starting to like Omos and AJ as this combination, but I couldn't help but feel that someone had mentioned this, I think, on his Twitter and everything. It's no surprise, but AJ is in this position here where he's in a tag team against the Viking Raiders. Rewind, a few years, and AJ Styles is wrestling Shane McMahon. He's wrestling John Cena at SummerSlam. And now he's relegated to a tag team. And yeah, I use the word relegated because, okay, maybe we want to use AJ as the sidekick to almost to get him over, if that is the case. But, we have to. When did we ever have to do this? Well, we had to take a giant step back. Yeah, they did the Rock and Sock connection. I've used this as an example before with other wrestlers. When they're in singles competition, they go back to a tag team. But that's only because that was really over, and the fans wanted to see them together. And having them together generated massive ratings. You ended up having the This Is Your Life segment being one of the highest rated segments in the history of WWE television. So you could see why they might want to take a step back into a tag team to try to milk that for all it's worth. And it worked, and it was a smart move. But does this do anything from AJ? You know what I'm saying? Like, even if we get almost a little bit over, at what expense? Because, and again, we had AJ against The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And that was a night one main event. And somehow, some way, this is kind of what we have. A match, the second match on the card. And it's only like a year and a half later. I don't understand how we can't maintain someone's status, on the roster. They always have to be like beaten down all the way to the bottom rung of the ladder. And then when they decide, then they start bringing them back up again. Well, we'll move on here. We got Lashley defeating Kofi Kingston. And, this went the way that it should have. I thought that they were going to do something goofy because we had like a pretty, raucous start with, Kofi almost getting that roll-up pin on Lashley. And, of course, that would be their style to do something like that. And those thoughts flashed through my mind. I'm like, please, let's not do this. They didn't do that. Especially also when we had Lashley getting the hurt lock on Kofi, and Kofi ends up elbowing his way out of it. I wasn't a big fan of seeing him break that move because you haven't had a lot of wrestlers break that move, and having Kofi Kingston break out of it, this would kind of be like if the Master Lock got broken by Kofi Kingston. No one would believe it. So, anyway, it didn't go that way because we just had Lashley destroying Kofi Kingston with 3 dominators, and then having Kofi, surprisingly, he tapped out. I thought they were just going to have him pass out in the hurt lock. So, now that we've done this, okay, let's not retread water again. I don't know if this was because it seemed like even the Smarks were unhappy with Xavier getting that schoolboy victory over Lashley. So hopefully they do away with the schoolboy nonsense. We really need to move away from that indie garbage style of booking where, oh, gotcha. They did it on SmackDown. It's enough already. Let's not go back to that again. It looked completely ridiculous, unbelievable. But here they had Lashley beat it down. This is exactly what he needed to do. But I feel like they didn't even need to do this if they didn't make the mistake with Xavier. But he needed to crush Kofi and make a statement. And I was expecting that they would do this, and I thought that it would just be like a minute-long match. But it turned out that they actually decided to make this 8 minutes long. But it was enjoyable. And if you really wanted to see Lashley redeem himself, you definitely got that here. So I was quite pleased with that. Charlotte defeated Rhea Ripley. This surprised me. All the temper tantrum there, stomping her foot like a goof. Like she's got toilet paper stuck to the bottom of her boot. I couldn't really knock this match because I was enjoying it. Match had a good flow. I was enjoying, they didn't go over the top with the kickouts. Charlotte hit the natural selection off the top rope. That, they used that wisely. If they were going to do, a kick out, a false finish, a falsie, that was good because, okay, she doesn't always win with that match, but you would think off the top, winning with that move. But when she hit it off the top, kind of thought it was over there. But I did like that she won in a more heelish way, stomping her leg when her leg was caught in the steel steps, and then she locks on the figure eight. That was really good, actually. Not only was there psychology behind that, but it was also a heelish way of winning. But I don't know where we go from here with Rhea Ripley. Like, is this really going to be one of the main stars here on the roster? Because I will say this. She did a good job in this match. This was probably the best I've ever seen her. 10 times better than what we saw at Mania from her. She looked competent here. She looked pretty good, I have to say. But, as a long-time star on this roster, I'm just saying, I look at her and the whole style, and there's just no appeal there. The goofy ass entrance of her stomping her foot like a goofball. Yeah, she's just not for me, I guess. But, you've got people like Jim Cornette putting her over and everything, and Jim Cornette's into some weird stuff, and he's a goofball half the time anyway, so I don't know what to say, but he's not the only one to really express, a lot of praise for Rhea Ripley, and I don't really see a lot to praise with her. I mean, she's a good fit against someone like Charlotte. That's why they're trying to milk this for all it's worth. But please end this feud already. I mean, how many times are they going to have these girls wrestle each other? And now after that, I would say, it's time to finish up this feud and move the hell on already. We're going to move on here, and now we start getting the Peacock Problems. People started experiencing it during this match. But they had a backstage segment that was pretty funny with Boogs and Matt Riddle and Nakamura was off there in the background. And this was actually a pretty funny thing where Riddle, I will say, getting into the whole thing of RK Bro, it really is a really, really cheap, watered down rock and sock connection with Mick Foley praising it on Twitter. Like, seriously, I've stated in the past, but Mick Foley's got to give it a rest already. I don't know what he's doing putting over today's product. I mean, he's trying to give a helping hand to Riddle. But it's only going to cause more eye rolls, to be quite honest. And people like me, I start to lose a little respect for Mick Foley, one of my favorites of all time, in my top 10, no less. I start to lose respect for the man when he starts putting stuff over that clearly is not good. But, Riddle does have a character, and he has kind of masterfully, executed this character, and he plays the goofball well. I will say that. He requests that Boogs play Randy Orton's theme voices, and they all sing it terribly, and Kevin Owens is there in the background, and he's going out for the match, and you see his facial expression. So that was actually pretty funny. They used Kevin Owens well there. I mean, he did a good facial. There was some good comedy there in the back, So no complaints there. But most of the audience, such as myself, when I went home later on, I had to watch this on Peacock back again, watch the replay, and see this segment because I was like, oh, there was something that happened backstage. Well, I figured there was some other stuff that was happening, like commercials. But yeah, a whole segment that was actually pretty decent and funny, actually fell on deaf ears. Wasn't even seen, was invisible because of all the technical problems that happened. But then we move on, we've got, lots of Peacock Problems, disastrous glitching, oops, there's a problem messages coming up, and it was just a total disaster, a total embarrassment for Peacock, for NBC Universal and their tech team. And just, I don't know how, you've already had it for this many months. You had WrestleMania on here, and you still can't get it right. They first of all, it was almost pathetic that they weren't even on Roku to begin with. They weren't even on Fire Stick. Like, if you're not on Roku and you're not on Fire Stick, then what the hell are you on? Like, pretty much. Like, there's no other things that you could download this app onto besides your phone and watch it on your computer. So, like, for being a streaming app, it was pretty pathetic until WWE came, and I guess they kind of gave them a little push there because they'd already been out for a while, Peacock, right? Like a year or so before they got the WWE Network. So they pushed them into being a bit more versatile there with what platforms they were allowed to be on. That they and this, I don't know. You would have thought that, okay, now they branched out and everything, but I guess now they probably purchased the cheapest bandwidth known to man, and they're just they're not doing a good job. Like I said, they have a really bad format. And it's the same thing also for Peacock, even for the main stuff like the TV shows and movies. If you check that part out, it's not really the best. And a lot of people are guilty of this. Even Hulu is guilty of this, of having a really bad format, starting off with a good format. And this is kind of like YouTube. They always start off good, and then they're like, oh, we got to make improvements. And then the improvements are anything but. It's a de-evolution of the platform, and it's like this for everything. It's even been like this for Netflix. Every single platform that I've seen that streams anything has always gone backwards, and I don't get why that is, why they think it's good, and people complain, and still the feedback falls on deaf ears. I just don't get it. Like, they can never get it right for some reason. So we got Big E winning the Money in the Bank match. And, I was happy with this result. We want to say, does Big E deserve it and everything? Well, I see a lot of potential in Big E. But I got to be honest with you. I'm not sure if Big E was really ready for this. And I'm seeing online, Big E frustrated that he didn't want to come to work and everything. Like, first of all, this is the thing. Why, like, maybe a month before this happened, could we not have Big E get a bit more serious? And I'm not saying he can't joke, because Big E is funny, and he does it well. And, I said, like, him laughing in Heyman's face. The guy has great facials. His facials after winning this match were good. But we still have that connection to the New Day. And that is why I'm saying we should have, we've had like a whole year here. We could have had Big E turning on the New Day. We could have had him a heel turn, and if you wanted to make him a face, you could have switched him back again, but they should have disconnected him from the New Day. He's still wearing the New Day on his attire. So I don't get, why we're kind of hinting that a New Day reunion is still possible, and we want to give Big E the briefcase and be an eventual world champion. No one is going to take this man serious as a champion. It was the same thing with Kofi Kingston. And yeah, some people went wild for Kofi Mania, but I will assure you that it was pretty much the live crowd cheering for Kofi Kingston. Because the live audience was pretty much checking out through most of 2019. The ratings were falling. Kofi Mania was not over with the home audience, which is the most important audience. It looks good for a live crowd, but for when a home audience is hating what you're doing, and he was still eating pancakes, throwing pancakes to the crowd, still doing the ridiculous dancing and everything. Is it not time that we end this already? And this would be a good opportunity to do that. Because I don't think that having Big E be this sort of pseudo New Day character that they're doing right now. Because he's still doing the same gimmick. Only once in a while with Apollo Crews did they have him get serious. And, you know, it was decent, but it wasn't quite where it should have been at that point. But whatever. Anyway, this was a good match. It was a really good match. And I will say this. Ricochet, you know, I've bashed the man in the past, but he did some spectacular Shelton Benjamin-like stunts in here. And, you know, Ricochet didn't botch any of it. That amazing stuff he did when, like, Matt Riddle tipped him off the ladder and he landed on the top rope, and then he did the somersault plancha, was amazing. It was breathtaking. And, you know, if this was done in AEW, that person would have probably fallen down and broken their neck with all the botches that they do. But, you know, this side of Ricochet here, you know, I like that we got away from putting him in that ridiculous superhero costume, because he's not a superhero and we shouldn't be doing that stuff with him. You know, but he looks spectacular here. And I also liked how Rollins and Morrison were teaming up. You know, you had some comedic spots in there, but this was like a pretty, you know, classically done ladder match. And Owens taking some really nasty bumps in this match, especially through the ladder. You know, also taking that ladder bump. You know, you never saw this back in the day, so I just know that it's like far too dangerous to be doing this stuff. I'm not a worker, of course, and I know people will bash me for that, and the dirt sheets deserve to be bashed for the same thing. But when you got them going on the ladder, and it's like sideways and everything, and then you have also when you had Bayley taking it at Hell in the Cell, when the ladder was wide open. That was the last pay-per-view. Remember I said at the beginning I forgot what the last one was? That's what it was. See, these are spots where I just feel like so much could go wrong that, like, they don't need to be there. I mean, they're good for but I mean, we're looking at, like, damn, like, you know, and I'm telling you, like, most people are probably not even going to remember this match because the build was so horrible. You know, most people are not going to remember a lot of these things. And this was a better show. But I think always to myself in retrospect, and I've even reviewed pay-per-views in the past, I'm like, they're good shows, but are they memorable? Because they don't have that little extra something there. You know, and plus I have to think, like with Big E, you know, how is this cash-in going to turn out? Who's he going to cash in against? Some people are even bringing this up online. Is he going to cash in against the NXT champion? That could even be a possibility. You never know. They could even have Nikki ASH doing it. Going to NXT, knowing them. We've seen it before. We saw Charlotte do it. And it's ridiculous when they do it. But that still kind of lingers. So hopefully they don't do that. They probably won't do that. I think that would be a really bad move for Nikki and for Big E. That would just completely just cement them as, you know, that just being a frivolous win for them. But this was pretty enjoyable throughout, and you didn't have all the goofballish stuff that happened in the opening match. Then we get to the really good stuff. Roman Reigns defeating Edge for the Universal Championship. And this was a classic main event style match. This is something like you would have saw in the 90s or in, you know, the 2000s that you just don't see anymore. There wasn't all these falsies. There wasn't, you know, false finishes. There wasn't 1,000 different moves. It was a really well done match. And of course, you know, you had to have that little piece of the chair, you know, and what Roman did is he shoved it up Edge's ass. No, I'm just kidding. That, I'm getting sick of seeing that little piece, but, you know, Edge manages to get that piece away from Roman, locks in the crossface, And Seth Rollins comes down. Here we go. So now we're entering into the Seth Rollins Edge feud. And, you know, I'm really worried with Edge being in there with Seth Rollins because we all know Rollins' history. I mean, now he's a bit more of a seasoned worker, and it's been a long time since they've reported him doing something to someone. So, you know, I'll rest my case for now, and it will remain to be seen. Then we have him coming back at the end with the distraction on Edge. Edge big boots him off the apron. Roman comes out at him with the spear. 1, 2, 3. No kick out. None of that bullshit. This was absolutely fantastic. This was a main event, really, for the ages, do I want to say? But it was one of the best things I've seen in a while. And I really liked their WrestleMania triple threat. But this was way better, actually. It really was. And it kind of is confusing why they wouldn't want this match to be at WrestleMania. But I guess, you know, Bryan wanted to get his match out of the way. So now we're having it at Money in the Bank. It's just, I don't know, it's perplexing that they wouldn't want to have that match at the bigger show. But whatever. I mean, I don't really care like a lot of people these days. You know, when almost every main event and show was good back in the day, you know, then I would debate like, oh, they should have saved it. But here I'm like, I'll make the comment like I just did, but I'm just happy to have a good match that flowed this way, that didn't have 1,000 false finishes, and none of these matches did, which was really good and really added to the enjoyment of me watching this show. I would recommend that you watch this match. I think anyone who's a fan of Attitude Era style matches and just matches that were just, you know, that weren't completely cartoonish, didn't look like they were straight out of a Marvel movie with everybody getting up after everything. This is a match I would recommend that you do watch. And I don't think that you will be disappointed. Because you know that I don't normally recommend that anyone go back and watch any of this stuff most of the time. But here I would say that you should. So after the match was all said and done, Rollins and Edge are brawling in the crowd, which I kind of like that. You know, it wasn't like just like, oh, well, I'll see you on Friday. You know, instead, there was a brawl in the crowd. Like I said, 90s style right there, you know, where there was no invisible barriers. You know, Edge and Rollins just going right at it, which was a nice start, you know, to what's, you know, going to really envelop the feud. You know, we've had the little hints here and there, but now, you know, now they're going toe to toe. But then Roman gets on the mic, you know, and he says that there's no one that could beat him, and that's it. And John Cena comes out to a huge, massive pop. And all the people, you know, that gave Cena a hard time over the years, I was like, wow, this is amazing now. Now pretty much universally realizes that Cena was great. Cena was good. And this is what I said for years and years. You know, back when Cena was regularly on the main roster, I said, you know, Cena's character was abysmal at times, that they gave him these promos that were disastrous. Remember the Star Wars promo. Remember all the Call of Duty promos. All those, like, pandering promos that were just really bad and annoying to listen to. And they just were horrible. But Cena always delivered. For all the people that said Cena can't wrestle, you can wrestle, that retarded crap. I even heard some of the idiots in the crowd chanting that to Roman during a chin lock. And that was one of the most unfortunate things that we did have. We did have some smarks in the crowd, which kind of surprised me for Texas, really. Like, you don't really hear that often, you know, from Texas. You'd hear that more in New York. You'd hear that more in Philly. You'd hear that in other states and cities. So that kind of like took me off guard. But maybe I'm wrong. I'll go back and watch some other Texas shows, and maybe there is like some annoying, because there's annoying smarks probably in all 50 states. without a doubt. Some more than others, of course. Sometimes it just goes with the territory. But Cena comes out face to face with Reigns. Well, they don't really go like face to face. They didn't get in each other's faces, and do that old gimmick, where they're so close they look like they're gonna make out half the time. But but anyway, yeah. So this is basically going to be your SummerSlam match. There's the hint, and I'm perfectly fine with it. The last time we saw this happen was at No Mercy. That was 2017, I believe. And it was a good match then, and now this match is going to mean even more now. Because last time it was all about, Roman couldn't get it done as the face of the company, and they were trying to get more out of Reigns. And now Reigns finally found himself, and this is going to be interesting to see how Cena fits into things, and if Cena will even be there for the weeks to come leading up to SummerSlam. We know he'll be gone again after that, but it's good that he's here. We still have, as a part-timer, this is a fairly young part-timer. I mean, we're only talking about a 40-year-old part-timer here, which is pretty good. So when we get to see him in action, I'm sure we're going to have an astounding match. And one that, might be just as good as this one. Hopefully it is. So, aside from the opening match having a lot of goofballery, it wasn't really a terrible shit show like some people said. Like I said, Off the Rope said that it was. And I see where he's coming from, but I'm being a bit fair here because not all the parts were bad. There were some parts. It really was a lot of this stuff involving Zelina Vega and Liv Morgan that was goofballish. When Alexa Bliss was working normally in the match, it was good, but when she was doing the cartoonish shit, it was, that wasn't good, in my opinion anyway. Maybe some people did like it. The crowd seemed like they were reacting to it. But anyway, it was a good pay-per-view, an enjoyable show. And yeah, guys, let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get auto notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And thanks again, guys. I'll see you next time.